This is House Planning Help, episode 21. Hello, I'm Ben Adam Smith, and this is the podcast for you if you want to find out more about self-building or renovating as I explore what houses we should be building in the 21st century. It's a long-distance interview today as we hook up with fellow podcaster Matthew Cutler-Welsh, who's in Auckland, New Zealand, and we find out why healthier homes are high on the agenda there. So how are you? Hope you're well and your projects are going okay. You can always get in touch because I love that and just hearing what stage of the process you're at. I'm particularly excited today because we have some new videos on the House Planning Help YouTube channel. I touched on this briefly last time, but I would love you to go and check them out. And you can do that by heading to the show notes for this episode, houseplanninghelp.com/21. We've teamed up with Martin Evans from the Malthouse Consultancy to make these, and they're based at one of his constructions, a beautiful modern country house. It's very light and airy and of course energy efficient. I think there are glulam beams there. It's a Hampshire frame, high performance windows, and you get to see all of that as one of the big advantages of video. You see all these things and you hear him explain the story. So that's one of the videos. Then on another one, he goes through some of the priorities, how you would approach an energy efficient building. For example, you don't go straight to your renewables, the fabric first approach. Investing in that envelope is really important before you move on to specifying inside and finally looking at how you might generate energy if that's still something that you want to do. And there's a video as well where he goes down into the plant room and explains the ground source heat pump system and the factors that affect efficiency. If it hasn't been put in properly, if the ground loops aren't big enough. So there's some interesting videos there and I hope that you'll enjoy them. So go and take a look, houseplanninghelp.com/21. Hopefully these are the first of many. I'm always scouting around for where there might be other opportunities, and also using some of the information that we've learned on this podcast and turning that into videos. That might be another avenue that I hope to explore soon. If you are based in the UK and you're looking to create video or perhaps a podcast for your business, don't forget that that's what I do as my day job at Regen Media. So if you're looking for expert advice, we also have quite a lot of knowledge on content marketing, and perhaps you're putting together your strategy, then look us up. I'll put a link in the show notes for that too. It's time for this episode's interview, and it's a little bit different because quite often I feel like I'm one of few people who's got into podcasting in this niche area. But very excitingly, the other day I discovered that I was not alone, so I thought this would be a great opportunity. It's a long distance interview, the longest one that we've ever had, and we're going to speak to a certain gentleman out in New Zealand. So let's say hello to Matthew Cutler-Welsh.
G'day Ben, good to speak to you. It's early in the morning down here in New Zealand. It's evening for you right now?
That's right. So I think I've definitely got the good end of this bargain. But I wanted to have a chat with you because you run a podcast which I am really getting into now called Homestyle Green. But I wanted to know about why you set this up, and I feel we've probably got some similarities here which I hope will come out during the course of the interview. So yeah, maybe you could set us off on Homestyle Green.
Yeah, so my vision is to create houses that are beneficial to the people inside them and also beneficial to the planet, and that's what I want to achieve. And the reason for that is because I'm really interested in sustainable urban systems, really, how we live, the fact that we are becoming more urbanized around the world. And when we look at the natural environment, it's a bit ironic that we tend to have most of the impact on our natural environment in these urban environments that we're creating, and that's because that's where we live, that's where we consume resources, and that's where we create our waste, is in these urban centres. And that can be quite overwhelming when you start looking at it. And I think houses are something that I've just through the work that I've been involved in is something that seems a little bit more manageable to focus on. We can all influence the way we live in some ways, and I'm very interested in the way we design our houses and build them. I sort of always enjoyed that design aspect, and after training in engineering, I thought this is something I can probably get interested in and maybe hopefully influence house design a little bit. So I created Homestyle Green to really share my interest and knowledge, connect with people such as yourself, but also provide a resource for people who are wanting to build a better home, who aren't satisfied with the status quo and the way we're tending to do things, but also as a way to get some professionals, get some knowledge from them and also to them about how they can build and provide better homes for people.
Sustainability is an interesting one, and particularly when you start to look in the towns and cities. So what elements would you say are sustainable, and what are the points that we have to work on?
Well, it's interesting, as well as Homestyle Green, my day job, if you like, I'm quite lucky to be working in a field that I'm really interested in, which is called Homestar. So it's a little bit confusing. My day job's at Homestar, and at night I come home and work on Homestyle Green. Homestar is a New Zealand sustainability tool for residential property, and it's run by the New Zealand Green Building Council. So I'm employed at the New Zealand Green Building Council. And the way I like to think of Homestar is that it really defines what sustainability means at the moment for a house. And what that looks like is a set of 6 categories for all the aspects of the house, and they are things like energy use, water use, how comfortable the house is, how much waste is created both during the construction and then also the ability for that house to deal with waste on an ongoing basis. The site, so the area around the home, the garden, and what's outside, things like permeable area, permeable surfaces for dealing with rainwater, and also where the house is located in that wider context of the local amenities. So within those categories, there's much more detail, which we've defined what we think are the really important issues, say for energy, and it sort of breaks down to things like lights and heating and your appliances. And by doing that, we step back from that and we actually say, well, this is potentially a definition of what sustainability means for a house. If you score the maximum points on all these what we call credits, then theoretically you could say you have a sustainable house, if you like. But sustainable, we could probably talk for hours just on the word sustainability. In fact, I've been to many conference sessions that have done just that. It's quite a big issue, but I quite like the general concept of doing things better that are going to reduce the impact and allow that activity to carry on pretty much indefinitely.
Is this something that most people are interested in? What are the key drivers in the New Zealand market?
I think people are always interested in health and the general well-being of themselves and their family. I am always seeking to find from homeowners and also builders and people in the industry the truth about what are the key drivers, and I think it does depend a lot on who you speak to. Even within an individual family, the person that's got to look after the children all day might have different ideas and about what different priorities from the person who's holding the purse strings and looking at and paying all the bills. Because I think it's a fallacy that homeowners and people in homes are purely driven by cost benefit. And we see that in the choices that get made, particularly in new homes. It gets proven again and again that a lot of decisions aren't logical when it comes to new build home design. If all decisions were logical, then we would probably not choose granite or marble bench tops and some of these sorts of things. So, I don't know if that answers the question or not, but I think there are so many potential drivers. One of the big issues here is actually availability and affordability, and that's something that I'm seeing more and more across the whole world, that housing affordability is a key issue, and that's a huge topic as well, and one that I think is often misconstrued, because it's usually just talking about purchase price. And like any building, the largest cost tends to be the actual running cost over the life of that building, and that's just something that's not really considered in that housing affordability topic in the mainstream media.
So how would you describe the housing stock that you have in New Zealand at the moment? What proportion is terrible? I've heard you mention it in your podcast a couple of times. I just wanted you to say it again.
Oh, it's appalling. And in fact, the people that tend to have most impact on houses in New Zealand are from overseas, because they are coming in and they're the ones that really understand and are quite shocked, rightly so, about the condition of some of our houses. I think the people who have grown up in a typical New Zealand house unwittingly contribute to the preservation of that standard, because there's a culture of, it's always been like that, and you just toughen up, and that's just the way we build houses here. But people coming from overseas, where it's colder climates, are just not satisfied with huge amounts of condensation on the windows and being able to see your breath inside, and having $300, $400, $500 electricity bills each month. So it's people who have experienced what quality housing can look and feel like who tend to want to make a difference. I think that's not exclusively, but we are a country with lots of expats and lots of people come here for the lifestyle. Fortunately, a lot of those people do come from places like Germany, the UK, even North America, where they've experienced much better quality houses. We didn't have insulation. Insulation wasn't required in New Zealand in the building code until 1978, and even prior to 2004, the level of insulation required wasn't spectacular. And one of the presentations I give at work at the moment, I cite a building that's less than 2 years old in Christchurch, which has a totally uninsulated concrete floor slab, and that's code compliant. So even the current code is, I would say, below par.
Yeah, it's a tricky situation, and I know that you say that we have the right idea every so often, but it sometimes feels in the UK that we're way behind things as well. We always look to countries such as Germany, who are really pushing boundaries and not dragging their feet and saying, we can't change all of this.
Well, having said that, though, I think one of the great things that UK seems to have going for it is some pretty decent goals around carbon neutrality in buildings, and that seems to be driving things in a positive direction. We, as far as I can tell, lack that sort of visionary, overarching goal here at the moment. So it's much more reliant on market forces and differentiation of people saying, hey, look, we can provide something that performs better, and we think that's a better product. So that's really where it's at now. It's just relying on people to... It's relying on industry, which is a risky business.
I'm wondering about climate change, whether that registers at all on the scale of consciousness over there.
I don't think so to the same level, and that's my previous comment about the, correct me if I'm wrong, it's carbon neutral buildings by 2016 in the UK?
Yes, but it's quite a tall order, I think. I'm not sure whether we'll get there.
Yeah, but I mean that's been stated, and it's out there. Climate change in general, I think, is discussed here, but we for example pulled out of Kyoto, which a lot of people were very disappointed by, myself included. Partly one of the reasons why there's not a real connection between carbon and our building and energy use here is because around 60-70% of our electricity production is hydro. So we don't have the same sorts of emission issues from our energy sector as, say, Australia or parts of America or the UK. A lot of our emissions comes from the agricultural sector. So it is out there. I think we suffer. One of our greatest strengths is also one of our greatest weaknesses, and that's our isolation. We can hide behind the fact that we're this little island in the Pacific, and those it's easy to ignore those bigger issues, I think, of climate change. Having said that, all of the North Island is now officially in drought, and that's when those real changes and those real issues do start to affect things like agriculture, which is such a hugely important part of the New Zealand economy. I think that's when people do start to think, oh, maybe something is not quite right here, and this is different from what it was in the past, and what's actually going on here. So unfortunately, I don't think we are as switched on to the realities of some of those issues as perhaps we should be, but there are definitely people, and there's an undercurrent of people who are motivated for some change.
I think part of the difficulty is that we're also wrapped up in what we're doing, first of all, and that until we get that palpable side of it, which I think will happen more and more, it's just too easy to forget about it. You don't see it on that local scale, but I do wonder, as you get, for example, in Australia, they had the really hot summer, didn't they? A few months back, that whether it might start speeding up a bit, and that could be almost good for action against it. And I feel that we need to focus on the action rather than getting scared by the size of the problem, because it is huge.
Yeah, definitely. I think the reality, though, in a lot of situations is that people are still going to look after their own families first. And because, particularly in wintertime, we have houses that they have damp issues, and they're very hard to heat, and people are struggling with utility bills, those issues are still going to be top of people's minds. And I think for those of us that have a real drive to improve things for the sake of the environment, I think we can tap into those things and address those issues. I call it sustainability by stealth, in that you address the issues that people are facing and look at the connection with those and some of the environmental goals that you want to achieve. And that's relatively easy to do on things like improving the insulation of a home, because that's going to help people's health, it's going to help reduce their power bills, and it's going to help them look after their family. And they're the things that a family who's in fuel poverty or just really struggling to keep warm and healthy during the winter, they're the things that are going to matter for them. And by fixing those, you also then have an ongoing wider environmental impact. So I think it's all about framing it for what's important for the people. I find it quite interesting that my first failed attempt at university was in the health sector. And I sort of dropped out of that because I figured that there were enough humans. We probably didn't need that much help in looking after our health. And I wanted to go down more of the environmental path. But I've actually found myself now back in a health issue, because our houses are a health issue.
Homestyle Green mentions health a fair amount. What are you worried about health-wise? Is it going back to mould and all of these things that you mentioned a little bit earlier?
Yeah, well, New Zealand has the second highest asthma rate in the whole world, which is pretty scary for a so-called first world country, a developed country. Asthma is the leading cause of hospitalisation for our children, and 1 in 4 of our children have relatively severe asthma. So they're kind of scary statistics, and that's just one condition. We know that mortality rates increase quite rapidly during wintertime. They're the fairly extreme examples, but it also affects productivity and sick days off work, and having to take days off if the kids are sick. And just general quality of life as well. People being in a home that's cold and damp and is just miserable, and that affects your health too. So as much as I'd like to stay doing engineering, I do realise more and more that our houses do affect our health, because we spend so much time inside them as well. They can't help but affect our physical well-being in some way.
Well, I really like what you do at Homestyle Green, but from your side, where is it going? Who are you aiming Homestyle Green at, and what would you like to achieve in the coming years?
I started aiming at people who are wanting to build and looking into getting into their own renovation or new build, sort of similar to the work that you do. But I'm focusing more now on the industry, and that's not to exclude people who are interested in building, because we often find there's quite an overlap there between the highly educated consumer and the sort of fresh tradesperson who's just learning these things, usually from a passionate customer. So my aim, my focus, my target market at the moment is people who are builders or designers, architects who are interested in helping their customers to build better homes. And my vision is really to help people create homes that are better for themselves and better for the environment. In terms of where it's going, in some ways I'd like to be the New Zealand equivalent of Kevin McLeod. That'd be nice. But I'd really like to just put things out there, put really good examples of houses out there, show people visually as much as possible. I'd like to get into a little bit more video. It's a bit tricky, but that's where I'd like to go, because I think that medium does a really good job of inspiring people, showing people other people's journey. People like stories, and building a house is a story. It's a bit of an adventure. And if that can be condensed down and some good learning extracted from that, then I think people enjoy that, but they can also really benefit from it. And it's a great way to spread some good messages about the way things can be done better. And a key message that I have for all people who are building is that we do deserve better, and things can be better, and you shouldn't just accept the status quo, particularly the way we're doing things now in a lot of subdivisions here in New Zealand, because it's just silly, some of the things that get built. And once people see that, and once people experience a better way of doing things, then I'm sure that they won't be satisfied with the status quo.
And is there a good source of information, a resource, a website that other people might find interesting, a recommendation of yours?
Yeah, we have quite a few over here. One of the most active ones for the industry, set up by a friend of mine from Christchurch, called EcoBob, ECOBOB.co.nz. That's got quite a lot of resources. On Homestyle Green, shortly I'm hoping to put up a list of the web resources. There's a book which inspired me quite a lot back probably when I was at school, actually, by a guy in Sydney who converted a terrace house, an old terrace house, old by Australian standards, and created it made it completely sustainable. It's called The Sustainable House, and his name is Michael Mobbs, and I can send you a link to that. But I still pull it off the shelf every now and then and look at it, because I don't know when it was written. It was a long time ago now, but and a lot of the stuff he did was revolutionary at the time, particularly for suburban Sydney. It's a terrace house, and he managed to put in everything from PV, solar hot water, even a little wetland and compost. I think I'm not sure if it's got a composting toilet or a flush toilet, but he managed to deal with a lot of stormwater and wastewater on site in this tiny little terrace house section, and he still runs tours in the house today. So the other exciting thing about that story is that I can't remember if he was a lawyer or some other profession, but he wasn't a builder, and he wasn't someone with a building background. So there's lots about that story which is very inspiring, and I still think back to that every now and then.
Well, it's been fascinating to have a chat with you today, and I'm sure we're going to hook up again, but maybe you could tell us how we find out about you, the website address, if you're on Twitter.
I am on Twitter, M Cutler-Welsh, all one word, and the website address is homestylegreen.com. You can also find my podcast on iTunes if you look in the iTunes store for Homestyle Green, but I've got links to that. Probably the easiest way is to jump on the website, and I've got links to a Facebook page, and I'm also playing around a little bit with Pinterest and Google Plus as well. But the other place there's some great activity going on at the moment is LinkedIn. And there are some great groups, and particularly for people who are, well, in any industry, but particularly in anything to do with sustainability or building and housing. There's some really good groups in LinkedIn, and I'm finding there's some great discussion going on there. Internationally, I've got no idea where some of the people I interact with live. I suspect a lot of them are in the US, but some really valuable sources of information on LinkedIn groups.
Yeah, I'm definitely a member of a couple of groups on LinkedIn, but maybe I should fish around some more. I do love this idea of having a connection with what's going on outside your home area, and that's why I think it's valuable that we brought you onto the podcast and had a chat, and almost forming a little community online as well. I love it. I think it's such a good idea, and I'm sure there's a lot more that I can learn from you. But another time, Matthew.
Yeah, another time, definitely.
Thank you very much for coming on to the podcast.
Thanks very much, Ben. Appreciate it.
And you can find the show notes for this episode at houseplanninghelp.com/21. I was also a guest on Matthew's podcast not so long ago, so if you fancy a giggle and would like to listen to that, I'll put the link in the show notes too. But it's weird because having worked in radio and television for many, many years, I've interviewed lots of people, but it happening the other way around, it's still, I think that's my third interview that I've ever given. Hopefully I'm getting better. My one call to action at the end of this episode is that you come and find me on Twitter. It's a great place to get interactive, and I think I like it over the other social media available. So at Ben Adam Smith, come and look me up. Don't be shy. And then looking ahead to next time on the podcast, we'll be talking about straw bale building. This subject fascinates me. My guest will be Mark Sach from Green Building Solutions. I hope you can join in for the next session. Take care.